Where to start? I guess we have to start with if everyone gets an A, nobody gets an A. Grading papers requires paying attention to whether people met or did not meet the requirements for the paper that I asked them to write. I can't just give people scores based on whether or not I like them. I have to give them scores based on a rubric, which everybody has access to in advance. They either met or did not meet the requirements, and grades are not ideally arbitrary. If everyone gets an A, nobody really gets an A. We have what's called grade inflation. Everybody has the same grade, and it's impossible to differentiate between people who are succeeding academically on their merits and people who are failing academically except for the kindness of relative strangers. Similarly, if everyone is Hitler, no one is Hitler. Godwin's law these days refers to any threaded discussion on the internet. It dates all the way back to 1990, so turning 31 sometime this year. Congratulations, Godwin's law, because this shit has been going on for a long time, even before threaded discussions on the internet. Essentially, the rule is the longer a discussion goes on, the greater the probability somebody compares somebody to Hitler. And this game is called If Everybody is Hitler, Nobody is Hitler. You might have noticed a propensity for people to throw the Hitler word around, like Godwin's law smacks, right? You know what the dude is talking about. You might have seen the big sign that has Obama with the toothbrush mustache, as though the Affordable Care Act were part of a slippery slope into Nazism, which is the opposite of socialism and socialized medicine. As though Adolf Hitler started the Nazi Party and took over Germany by giving everyone access to affordable healthcare. It's almost every time that you see a Nazi analogy, it's just bullshit. But sometimes it isn't. The point of always calling everyone a Nazi is exactly to inure the populace to Nazi comparisons. It's to remove the sting of the most morally relevant character in the 20th century, and arguably so far the 21st. So if I remember, I'll link some stuff from Alec Reary down below on this topic. See, words like Nazi and fascist could be used in a couple of different ways. One would mean that you literally mean someone is literally a fucking Nazi. And the other way is as sort of a rhetorical superlative. They're the most evil of evil people. And the more that we use the words in the second sense, the less that they can really have any specific meaning in the first sense. So, do I have evidence that there's a coordinated effort to refer to all things liberal as Nazi to obfuscate the meaning of the word, change the word's meaning in the English language? Of course I don't. But the way that things stand right now, things could not be any worse if that were the case. And we do have plenty of evidence of Republicans doing this to all sorts of words. Take, for example, the idea of fake news. Fake news, the phenomenon that, man, really was heavy in that 2015 Trump campaign. It was so hard, and like we were getting really moved by it, and the Germans and the French really weren't because they have decent education systems, but we really were. And people started to notice that all the fake news was really swirling around the Trump campaign as though it were coordinated to keep us disinformed and misinformed. And then, of course, the Trump campaign started using the words fake news just to mean anything that they don't like, more or less explicitly to rob fake news of its useful meaning, which is the guy you're trying to get us to vote for is a fucking liar, and so is everything in his campaign. Welcome back to the Black Pill. Let's get back into Umberto Eco's list of things that characterize Ur Fascism. Number 4. No syncretistic faith can withstand analytical criticism. The critical spirit makes distinctions, and to distinguish is a sign of modernism. In modern culture, the scientific community praises disagreement as a way to improve knowledge. For Ur Fascism, disagreement is treason. Science doesn't prove things true. It attempts to prove them false and sometimes fails. When we have an idea, scientists attempt to disprove it. Only after many attempts at falsification, with lots of replication, can we start to declare a thing provisionally true, the proviso being it isn't falsified tomorrow. Something like evolution or relativity get put forward as fact because the evidence, which actually means extravagant attempts and numbers of attempts that have all failed, is so strong that the probability of this being wrong are really so close to zero, they are basically zero. Eco distinguished syncretistic faith here, but he needn't have. No faith could withstand long scrutiny. Fundamentalism again works opposite to science. Science refrains from having an opinion, then conducts a good faith review of the best available evidence before arriving at tentative, careful opinions. Fundamentalism starts with the conclusion. God made the earth in 6 days, or Donald Trump is a good man. It then works backwards through the facts, acknowledging only those that seem to support its position. Modern fascism goes a step further and just says whatever would need to be true for the starting position to be true, and then whatever would need to be true for those additional premises to be true, and so on. And a step further still, those who disagree are the enemy. If Trump is good, or God is real, or if the moon landing was fake, the earth is round, 9/11 was an inside job, vaccines cause autism, and COVID 19 is a communist American hoax to discredit the president, then whoever believes otherwise must be bad. It's been said more than once. If the facts are on your side, pound the facts. If the facts are against you, pound the table. Nobody can listen to a sensible discussion of whether politicians ought to get foreign governments to announce spurious investigations of those politicians' political opponents for the sake of a soundbite for Fox News. If A, nobody knows what spurious means, and B, everybody is busy checking out Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria for evidence of Hillary Clinton's pedophilic sex trafficking ring. There are two ways to destroy a democracy. One is to change the way votes are counted, the other is to destroy information itself. The quickest way to destroy information is to launch a million spurious character attacks against your political opponents. If everyone's a Nazi, the liar's dividend pays off. If I tell a lie about you and you let it pass, I am free to keep telling lies about you. An ecosystem builds up around those lies such that even your own supporters begin to believe them. Eventually, you must respond. When you respond, however, you inform people about the lie who previously didn't know about it, and it is harder to dispel disinformation than it is to plant it. So now you're talking about whatever I want you to talk about instead of actual issues. If one refers to one's opponents as enemies and traitors, the liar's dividend magnifies. We want to see members of outgroups punished. Lock her up, and we'll cut off our own nose to spite our face. Here it's relevant that we source Heather McGhee's book, The Sum of Us. We'll come back to that. At this point, the limbic system is fully engaged. The frontal lobes take a back seat, no longer driving the car, but merely rationalizing whatever decisions the limbic system makes. McGee's premise is that the US was a bit of a socialist utopia in the 1950s, until desegregation. Towns with public works such as swimming pools literally filled those pools with concrete or sold them to private agencies for $1 rather than share them with black people. In modernity, all a union buster has to do to prevent a union vote from succeeding is present white workers with pictures of black co-workers. White people prefer to have no collective bargaining power rather than see black people benefit from their union dollars. If you were a fascist trying to come to power in the US, there would be one big factor against you: freedom of speech and information. In a word, journalists. People make their decisions to some degree based on facts. And if you were, say, a racist, sexist psychopath prone to making false statements, journalists would sure be there to show people that everything you say is a lie. Again, the primary weapon is to turn journalists into traitors, enemies of the people, scum. Every night at every rally, point to the back of the hall where the press pool studiously records every word. Tell the people to look back there and hate. Whoever says good about you is good. Whoever says bad about you is not merely your enemy, but an American enemy, a dirty commie, a fit target for violence. Even your own friends would be subject to these rules because a fascist has no friends. The in-group gradually shrinks as out-groups are defeated. The fascist always needs something or someone to react against. Us gets smaller and them gets bigger. Supporters must always know if they ever slip in the slightest way, they will be tossed from the in-group, losing the protection of membership, branded a traitor, like cutting a man before pushing him into shark-infested waters. So here's Mike Pence, fascist, homophobic Republican patsy, willing to corrupt the electoral process and benefit from that corruption all the way to the very end. But he steps away from the altar just before the ritual can finally be completed, refusing to hold up certification of the 2020 election as his party wants. Rioters crashed into the Capitol building. They were mostly after Pelosi, but some of them were after Pence. Trump verbally excoriated his right-hand man, giving him away to the crowd like a prison bitch. One misstep, you're out of the club, left for dead, or traded to another psychopath for a pack of cigarettes. And this all brings us around to item 5 on the checklist: racism.